The endless room. It started with a dare, as these things often do. My friend Brian stumbled across a thread on some obscure forum about the endless room, a local urban legend, claiming there was a hotel room where time and space warped. Once you entered, you couldn't leave until you finished the story. No one knew what that meant, but every version of the tale ended with the same chilling line. The door opens when it wants you to leave, not when you want to. Brian was obsessed with urban legends and begged me to come along. The hotel was one of those forgotten roadside motels you only notice when you're desperate for a place to sleep. Faded paint, flickering neon lights, and a sagging roof. Room 6 was the supposed location of the anomaly. The clerk was an older man with hollow eyes and a cigarette that seemed fused to his lip. When Brian asked for room 6, the clerk froze for a moment, then handed over the key without a word. That should have been our first red flag. The room itself was unremarkable. Beige walls, a single bed, and a small, outdated TV. But there was something off. The air felt heavy, like the room was holding its breath. Brian immediately started recording with his phone, narrating the urban legend and panning across the room. "This is it," he said, grinning. "The endless room." I didn't find it funny. "You've got your footage. Let's go," I said, heading for the door. But when I turned the knob, it wouldn't budge. "Okay, very funny," I snapped. Brian held up his hands, looking as confused as I felt. He tugged at the door, then slammed his shoulder against it, but it didn't move. That's when we noticed the window was gone. "What the hell?" Brian whispered. At first, we thought we were imagining things, that fear was playing tricks on us. But the room was changing, slowly, subtly. The wallpaper started peeling on its own. The bedspread looked stained, though we swore it had been clean earlier. And the sound, this faint scratching noise, kept coming from the walls. "Maybe it's mice," Brian said, trying to sound calm. But the look in his eyes betrayed him. We sat in silence for what felt like hours, staring at the door, hoping it would miraculously open. When the light started flickering, Brian grabbed his phone to check the time. It was dead. "It was at 80% 5 minutes ago," he muttered. My own phone was also lifeless. The TV buzzed to life on its own, static filling the screen. A shape began to form in the static. A figure, featureless but humanoid, standing in a dark room that looked disturbingly like ours. "Turn it off," I hissed. Brian pressed the power button, but nothing happened. The figure on the screen turned its head, as if it could see us. Then it took a step forward and another. "Smash it!" I shouted. Brian grabbed the remote and hurled it at the screen. The TV shattered, but the static didn't stop. It spilled out, a gray mist that filled the room and smelled like burnt hair. We tried to stay calm to convince ourselves this was some elaborate prank, but the room wouldn't let us. The bed frame bent itself into impossible angles. Shadows danced on the walls without a light source. The scratching sound grew louder, more frantic, like nails on a chalkboard. And then we heard it, a voice faint but unmistakable. "Finish the story." Brian's eyes darted to me. "What story?" he screamed. The voice didn't answer. Instead, the door started banging from the outside, as if someone, or something, was trying to get in. We backed into the corner, holding on to each other like terrified children. "We're sorry," Brian shouted. "Let us out." The banging stopped. The room fell silent. Then one by one, the lights went out. When I woke up, I was alone. The room was back to normal, or close enough. No mist, no shadows, no distorted furniture. Just a cheap motel room with the door slightly ajar. Brian was gone. His phone lay on the bed recording. I picked it up and hit play. The video showed us entering the room, joking around, tugging at the door when it wouldn't open. Then the footage cut to static. For a split second, the static cleared, revealing Brian. He was standing in a dark, endless space, looking at something behind the camera. His mouth moved, but there was no sound. Then the video ended. I drove home in silence, too afraid to call anyone, too scared to sleep. The next day I checked the news. No reports of missing people, no mention of the motel. It was as if Brian had never existed. I thought I'd escaped, that the nightmare was over. But last night, I woke up in my room to the sound of scratching. And when I checked the mirror, my reflection wasn't looking back.